Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my top 10 books of 2020 video. This list really showed me a lot about my reading of 2020, and that very similarly how the year wasn't that great, neither was my reading taste or just the books I ended up picking up. I did a lot of rereading this year, which I typically do when I'm seeking comfort. It's just something I enjoy. But the books that I did branch out to, I had a hard time filling this list. My top 5 are solid and I stand behind them very closely. But as for the latter 5, it really wasn't that. I'm still excited about a lot of these books, but they're just not the like 5-star feels I was feeling with the top 5. I'm gonna include the star rating as I talk about the books, and I will try and have all of them linked down below as well. Also, I was too lazy to pull the books down off my shelves, so I'm just going to talk from my bullet journal out of them. But all right, coming in at number 10 is going to be Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, and we are following the story of children after they come back to reality from the fairy tales that they were previously living in. I believe our main character's name is Nancy, and in this story, Nancy has come back from a portal realm and is having a hard time adjusting, so her parents send her off to this boarding school where they help children adapt with what they have been through. And at this school, shit just starts going wrong from the beginning. Nancy has completely changed in this portal world. She doesn't have the same interests. She's not the same little girl, quote unquote, that her parents describe her as before she disappeared and then after she came back. And I really enjoyed the story for what it was. It was good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Nancy was cool. She was fine. I really enjoyed the like main side male character and his story. After that, I was kind of like, what? And also the ending kind of left me confused. I am continuing on with the series, so it's making it clearer as things go along. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is kind of shocking because if you guys saw my videos about it and my wrap-up especially, I finished this later on in the year and I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. And in this book, we are following Alex Stern, and she is Yale's most unexpected freshman, and she has been recruited by the Ninth House to preside over the other 8 secret societies. Now, this is so fascinating to me because there are really secret societies within these top Ivy League schools. Leigh Bardugo also attended Yale University, so that was also very like, whoa to me. We just follow the very illegal, dangerous, concerning acts of these secret societies. Obviously, this is all conspiratorial. Nothing is confirmed nor denied in this story, but we follow Alex as she deals with her missing mentor and a mystery on campus, and we just kind of follow their story. I feel like as Leigh Bardugo's debut adult novel, she writes YA really, really adult already, just in her writing style, I feel like. And I feel as though for me this was like even harder to grasp, but I think with Ninth House I was just a little too confused. I did listen to this book audibly, and I feel like if I had read it physically, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. I feel like it would have been more of a chore as opposed to like an enjoying time, which I really did enjoy listening to it audibly. That was also 4 out of 5 stars. Next, for the top 8th book is going to be A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and on the plane of like marketing for Beauty and the Beast retellings, I feel like this is a much more comparable book to Beauty and the Beast. We are following Harper, and she's just chilling in her regular old life when she is swept up and transported to Ember Fall. And there we have a prince who has been cursed and blah blah blah, needs to break the curse. The whole Beauty and the Beast trope, obviously. We have a captain of the guard of sorts and he is really, really intriguing, and forces are closing in on all sides. I really enjoyed this Beauty and the Beast retelling. I think it was more, like I said, accurate to Beauty and the Beast, and I will be continuing on with the series. I really enjoyed it, and I just remember liking the atmosphere that it had kind of built up. Coming in at number 7, I'm going to have to give it to Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Early on this year, I did read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, and I was not a fan. I don't really like the Mortal Instruments series. I've talked about it before. I did talk about it in my mid-year book freakout tag as well. It just wasn't it for me. I don't know if it gets better. I've heard it does. I have had people tell me to continue on with City of Ashes, I believe that's what it's called. The entire book was pretty good. It was the last like 60 pages that threw me for a loop, and I was like, I don't understand this, I'm not behind it, and I don't know where Cassandra Clare was going with this. If you have those same thoughts, I highly suggest skipping the Mortal Instruments, go on to the Infernal Devices, and you can come back at a later date. But I loved the first book, Clockwork Angel. In the Infernal Devices, we are following Tessa Gray, who, after I believe her last living like guardian relative passes, she moves out to London to be with her brother, and her brother's like nowhere to be found. She gets swept up with the institution, and we have our little dynamic trio of Will, Tessa, and Jem. I really enjoyed them. I really liked the camaraderie of the group much more than I did Jace and Clary. I way preferred it, and I am continuing on with the series, and then I'll hopefully get to the last hours as well. So we are getting into the 5-star books now. Coming in at number 6 is going to be The Night Swim by Megan Golden. I loved this book. This was my first mystery, I think true mystery book that I have read. We are following Rachel Craw, and she is the host of the podcast Guilty or Not Guilty, and after 2 very successful seasons, she is struggling to find out what she's going to do next for the 3rd season to make it just as great as the other ones, and she decides to follow an active trial. This is the first time it's being done. Nobody has really stepped into this yet, and she decides to take it on, and it just happens that the active trial she is covering is the alleged rape of a 16-year-old girl by a collegiate swimmer. So there are definitely trigger warnings for rape, sexual assault, death, quite a few things within this book. I highly suggest going in with caution, but going into the book knowing that, I also highly recommend you listen to it audibly. This book is broken up into kind of 3 main formatting. So we have the behind the scenes covering of the active trial. We also have the podcast episodes that cover the trial, which are formatted for audiobooks just like a podcast would be. We have intro music and outro music, and they're pretty short podcast episodes. I feel like they were beautifully done. And the third kind of aspect we have is that Rachel is approached with a case from about 30 years prior, and it is approached to her as a mislabeled crime. So she is investigating that, trying to get to the bottom of what really happened on that fateful night 30 years ago, while also still trying to cover the trial of today and do it tastefully and try to stay unbiased, even though all signs point in a pretty strong direction. I loved the audiobook. I think it was amazing. I highly recommend it. It is an amazing audiobook, and it is quite short. And again, the podcast episodes just really tie it in. If you do listen to podcasts like Serial Killer or any true crime, really, it is very, very comparable to that. Coming in at number 5 is another 5-star book, and it's going to be An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I'm not going to cover too much about this because I did an entire book talk about it, but the atmosphere alone in this book I absolutely loved. I've said it quite a few times and I'll say it again. This book was descriptive enough. It was exactly my kind of sweet spot for descriptive writing. It wasn't so lyrical and flowery where you felt like you're trying too hard, but it also wasn't lacking such description that you couldn't feel yourself in the book. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. It is a desert set fantasy, I believe, and we are following Elia and Elias, and we have a caste system in this world where Elia is kind of at the bottom of the ranks, and she is just trying to get through the death of majority of her family and the arrest of her brother. And with that, she gets in with a gang of rebels who are also trying to find out what happened to her brother. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have Elias, who is part of this military academy, and there he is training to really punish people like Laia, people who are part of the rebellion, and their paths intertwine. Really great. We all obviously have a budding romance, and this is a quartet, I believe. Coming in at number 4 is another recent read, and this is going to be Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. In this story, it is set in Italy, and we are following Amelia, and she is just living her life with her parents and her twin sister Vittoria at their Italian restaurant when everything kind of gets turned around after Vittoria is brutally murdered. And I'm talking about like brutally murdered. Amelia starts to think some suspicious things are going on, and it does not help her situation that her and her sister are witches. So with all that being said, we also have the introduction of wrath, and the author has personified the 7 deadly sins, or what we know as the 7 deadly sins. And I had never thought of that before. It probably had crossed my mind at one point or another. The sins are obviously human traits, so to have them be personified, it was pretty seamless, but I absolutely loved it. There is going to be another book. I will be reading it. I also just related a lot with the story. At the base of it, our character loves to cook at her family's restaurant, and my family also does have a restaurant just like Amelia's, and I just really heavily related with that, and I really enjoyed the story. And again, that personification of the sins was so well done. I really liked it. This was also the first Carrie Maniscalco book I have read, and from what I've heard about her other works, they are just as great, so I definitely think in 2021 I will have to pick up some of them. All right, now we're down to the top 3, which are obviously some of my favorites. We're gonna come in with number 3 first, and that is going to be Carnival. This is actually kind of 2 books because I could not pick between Carnival and Legendary. Finale, on the other hand, was like, it was okay, but I really just held Carnival and Legendary to such high standards, and they did not disappoint. I don't know how to explain it. It is just such a good time. It is very reminiscent to me of The Greatest Showman. I really enjoyed that movie, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Carnival, but essentially we are following a traveling carnival of sorts. But the only catch is everything is not what it always seems. There are actors in this carnival, and they just kind of go around and put on a show, and you don't know what is real and what is fiction. I love the world that Stephanie Garber has created with both of these books. In the first one, we are following Scarlett Dragna, I believe is their last name, and she is just about to get into an arranged marriage, and for the past 7 years she has been writing to the master of Carnival to ask if he would invite her and her sister, and this is going to be the last year she would be able to go before she is shipped off for her marriage. And right before the beginning of the carnival begins, she receives a letter that her and her sister are invited by Master Legend, the head of this whole deal. And they travel to Carnival, and there everything is not what it seems to be. So it takes a really interesting turn. I absolutely love the story. And then the second book, we are following the sisters kind of story of sorts, Tella or Donatella Dragna. I loved this book so much. It is, again, so atmospheric. I felt like I was there with the characters. And this was also one of the stories that was so atmospheric that I was able to picture what I was hearing while I was there. I did create an entire playlist called Carnival on my Spotify that I have specific songs for specific scenes within the first 2 books. The third one was like kind of eh. It just shows how much I absolutely loved these books, and I highly recommend them to anybody who likes that kind of carnival adventure-y kind of story. All right, coming in at number 2 is going to be Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas. This is the final book in the Throne of Glass series. This is the final book. It did take me over a year to read the entire series, and I didn't even read Assassin's Blade or Tower of Dawn, which I really should have read Tower of Dawn. Again, this is another one that I'm not going to talk too much about because I have a whole vlog on my reading experience for Kingdom of Ash and how it absolutely destroyed my life. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I'll give the quick synopsis for the first book. Essentially, we are following Selena Sardothian, who is a kind of renowned thief and assassin in this area, and she is taken slave to a place called Andovier, and there she is recruited by the King of Otterlin to join in the King's Championship. And this first book is essentially like Hunger Games. I feel like this whole King's Championship, it's very reminiscent of that to me. We basically have like probably 20 contestants who are all like fighting to the death, or if they drop out they could do that, but it's kind of like shameful if you do, until somebody is crowned the King's Champion. And that's really the synopsis for the first book. I will let you know that the final book ends nowhere close to that, so yeah, everything changes by then, and it really is an upwards battle to get through the story. I didn't really start falling in love with it until I'd probably say Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, just because I did read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series before I read Throne of Glass, and I do have a more higher ranking for A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it holds a more special place in my heart. But I still adored Kingdom of Ash, and it is probably one of my favorite Sarah J Maas books. But A Court of Thorns and Roses holds that high spot just out of pure, like, it was one of the first YA series I read kind of deal. All right, and we have reached my top book of 2020, and it is no surprise saying this. It's going to be Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, of course. So I read this pretty early on in the year. I'd probably say about March, April, or May. And this is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. So I'm not going to give a spoiler, but I will just talk about it very quickly. Leigh Bardugo knew where this book was going to end from the beginning she started writing it, because the way that she perfectly executed and tied up every loose end, but not perfectly because you're not content with it, she does not hold back when it comes to breaking your heart. So I will just give a quick synopsis of Six of Crows, because it is a part of a duology. But essentially we are following Kaz Brecker, who is also known as Dirty Hands. He is kind of the head of the barrel. He is a really conniving thief in this area. Conniving. Do I like that word? He is a really conniving thief, and I feel like is one of the first that comes to mind in YA morally gray characters. But he is offered the opportunity for a pretty big heist and an opportunity at a shit ton of cash. So once this is brought to his attention, Kaz recruits 5 other misfits, as they are described, and the 6 of them set off to pull off this heist. Now we are continuing on obviously with the heist in the second book, and we are kind of following where that goes. I absolutely loved Crooked Kingdom. Both of them were 5 out of 5 star books, but Crooked Kingdom was just everything. Even though I was probably sobbing while reading it, I still loved it and probably wouldn't change a single thing about the book. I am currently reading Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. It did again come before, but I'm reading it after. I don't know how well it's gonna hold up. I have very high standards after reading that part of Leigh Bardugo's work, but I think that it might be my favorite just because, again, Ninth House didn't hold a flame at all to how I feel about Crooked Kingdom. Literally the most insane story. The way that Kaz Brecker's mind works is so convoluted, conniving, just morally gray, but also it's like that whole type of trope where like they're not really that bad, but they are bad. Do you know what I'm getting at? I don't know, I highly recommend it. And if you're looking for any YA fantasy and have not picked up the Six of Crows duology, this is me to you. I highly, highly, highly suggest it. And if Six of Crows is super interesting to you, but you're still missing something, again, Crooked Kingdom gives it all. I am still probably messed up about this book. It is just definitely ranking in my top 5 favorite books of all time. It's not my top favorite, but it definitely is probably ranking at like my 5th all-time favorite book. I absolutely adore it. And that is it for me, guys. Those were my top 10 books of 2020. Again, this isn't exactly the stellar list I would have been giving, but this year has been trying. So I'm definitely glad we're getting into 2021. I am going to be sharing with my top 21 books to read in 2021 very shortly, so keep an eye out for that video. I do have my 2021 reading bullet journal plan with me, as well as a January spread up. If you guys want to check that out, I'll have it carded as well as linked down below. So I hope you all had a safe and happy new year. Hope you guys stayed home, did the right thing. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you all are staying safe and having a great day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.